PopNerdery, the show that is nerdier than reading Rozelle lyrics online to find deeper meaning in his 1990s beatbox tracks. This is a place that you're allowed to have an opinion on anything in pop culture, but you gotta have more than just a little bit to say. In episode 11 here, we'll pick out some of the headlines that have us talking this week. We will do a deep dive and then give our pop culture recommendations. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. I'm your host, Brent, and with me, as always, is the Inceptor to my Inceptee, Toph, and the Godfather to my Godfather, Dave. What's up, guys?
Hey, episode 11. We made it.
We made it.
We did it, guys.
We turned it all the way up to 11.
Unless I've just incepted you all as the Inceptor when I've been incepting or incepted, depending on which timeline we're in. I don't know. You know what I do know? Got a little housekeeping for you. You can follow us on the Twitters at PopNerdery, PopNerdery. We comment on things as they happen. We subtweet, we emoji, we laugh, we live, we love on the Twitters, as you would expect. You got 3 ways to listen to the show. The first is on the iTunes. Fire up that podcast section, type Pop Nerdy into the search box, and you will find our tones to put in your ear holes. You can rate, review, subscribe, snuggle. I guess we won't know if you snuggle it, but I think we'll feel good in our hearts if you were to do that.
We requested that they add a snuggle button to iTunes, but our requests have gone unanswered.
Come on, Apple.
We're talking to Apple about it. We'll fix
Apple, hello? Apple.
I'm just going to keep shouting Apple until something happens. Second way to listen to the show, at popnerdery.com. Archive all the episodes there. You can find us in the comments chatting about things. You can find us in the comments fighting about things. You can find us in the comments loving about things. You can also find us in the Pop Nerdy Talkback section, popnerdy.com/talkback, where you'll find my flaming hot takes on Ex Machina that I watched while sweating on an exercise bike. So that's a quality review that you're going to want.
And you know what else they can find in the Talkback section, Toph?
Lovin'?
They can find the place where you actually literally did incept me and gave me the idea of Bruce Campbell as Cable, which we referenced in episode 10. Go check it out, listeners. And then you can go back to, I believe it's episode 7, where Toph had that idea and we completely forgot that it ever happened.
We blew it off. We said, hey, Toph, that idea, not so great. And then when Brent said it, holy shit, it blew our minds.
Let's be honest, everything sounds better coming out of my mouth.
Yeah, my entire role in this podcast is for you to repeat something I said 5 episodes ago. And then even I will be impressed with it. I can't help myself. You got one third and final way to listen to the show. You can detail a complicated strategy for fighting the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man into an audio cassette. Please keep it under 10 minutes. Mail it to Dave Fultz. He will come podcast directly over your shoulder in person live.
Just don't cross the streams, right? That's all. Or, no, do cross the streams.
See? Yeah. It's complicated.
It's got to be, yeah. I'll do that. I will podcast over your shoulder. So, listeners, in our B segment today, we are going to talk about some of our favorite authors. Yes, we do read books occasionally here. You also are going to hear our very first ad copy here. So you're going to hear us talk about listening to books. So we figured that we would talk about some of our favorite authors in the B segment. But first, we're going to go through this week's nerd news. I don't know exactly why, fellas, this happened this week, but we've been inundated by updates to release dates and new release dates and all sorts of stuff. So as I was putting together the news segment for this week, I just ran into updates to release dates all the time. So I figured it would give us a really good excuse to quickly touch on each of these movies. We talk about these sometimes, but yeah, I figured that this is a good excuse to rapid fire through some. Star Wars, the sequel to The Force Awakens, which will probably be called Something Something Strikes Back. Luke's awesome man beard strikes back.
Yeah, that's probably what they're going with.
I'm sure that JJ, call me. I'm just saying. Call me. Bruce Campbell strikes back, probably.
I watched that.
So Star Wars has been moved back a couple of months to December of December 15th, 2017, from May of that year. Honestly, I think that this is probably a smart move by Disney. They just saw how great a Christmas release can be for a movie. They kind of had movie theaters to themselves for a little while and made like $1.5 billion. So I think they might want to turn Christmas into Star Wars-mas and do this every year.
But do we really think that it was like the Christmas period that did it, or simply the fact that it was Star Wars and awesome?
I honestly, I mean, obviously that was the biggest part of it, was that it was Star Wars 1 and awesome 2. But I do think that having the theaters, the multiplexes to yourself for 4 to 6 weeks really helps rake in the box office.
Yeah, and we've talked on previous podcasts about how nostalgia is an emotion that tends to come out in the winter months, and there are many movie franchises, give it Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, whatever, that have continually come out around the Christmas holiday and have done very well and become kind of indoctrinated in that world a little bit. So Star Wars did their first jaunt into being a holiday thing, and it totally made them a lot of money, so I can't blame them.
Well, nostalgia is one thing, but also there's a holiday at the end of December that people buy things for, and half of Star Wars moneymaker is the box office, but the other half, and maybe even more than half, is the marketing and the toys and the whatnot. So
I think that might be the actual reason for it.
Yeah.
And I'm not mad at them either. Get your money.
I'm not upset about that, because if it means that every 2 years someone's going to buy me some nonsense Star Wars thing that I was too dumb to buy, too adult to buy myself.
Not too dumb, too adult.
Yeah, too adult to buy myself. I think that could be fine. In also Disney news, the MCU reboot of Spider-Man, which we learned today is going to be released in IMAX 3D. That movie was moved up a couple of weeks to July 7th, 2017. So they're going to monopolize 2 holidays that year. They're going to monopolize the 4th of July and Christmas with Spider-Man and Star Wars. Again, I think this is smart. If you have a hole at the end of May that you're vacating by moving Star Wars, move Spider-Man a little bit closer to that and rake in the money over the holiday weekend.
Or they could have moved a movie that someone wanted to see there.
I legitimately do want to see this reboot of Spider-Man, because it'll be the first Spider-Man movie that keeps him in high school and actually cast a teenager to play teenage Peter Parker.
Not a 35-year-old Tobey Maguire.
Yeah, and you know what? Those Spider-Man movies did a lot, I think, to get us to where we are now. But yeah, it's not the thing about Spider-Man that we liked. That he got a job in an apartment in New York by the start of the second one, and we were done with high school Spidey. So I'm excited to see it. I'm also excited to see how he fits into the MCU. And we're actually going to see that in a couple of months here with Civil War. Also, Marvel news. This is not a movie, but there was on the Jessica Jones Twitter account, they hinted at a possible November release date for Luke Cage. So
hell yes.
It could also be a hint for the second season of Jessica Jones, which is just Luke Cage heavy, but I don't think so. We haven't gotten any idea that Jessica Jones has started filming yet, that second season, and we know that Luke Cage has been filming since, I believe, September of last year. So I'm going to go with that until I hear any differently. What they tweeted out was an Alias Investigations folder that was labeled Cage-November.
Either way, gimme.
Yeah, and they have knocked these things out of the park since they started releasing them. We're going to get Daredevil Season 2 in March. I believe it's March 18th is the release date for that, 1 week before Batman Superman, so they're really flipping the bird to DC. But I'm excited for Luke Cage. It's a character that we certainly haven't seen enough of. He's been fairly prominent over the last 5-10 years in the comics.
Holy Christmas.
Sweet Christmas. Sweet Christmas, my friend. When I heard Sweet Christmas on Jessica Jones, I let out like a squee, like a legitimate fangirl squee when he And I thought it was especially appropriate because it came right after sex. I thought that
Well,
was...
yeah, no, it made a lot of sense. It was just it cracked me up. Like, it got an actual belly laugh because it's still such an awful catchphrase, and it's amazing that they remained like loyal to it.
Yeah, my wife found it really weird when I started using it as my after-sex phrase.
And that was 8 months ago, the last time it happened.
I just went a real deep voice and sweet Christmas.
Sweet Christmas.
All right. I hope she doesn't listen to this
Congratulations,
one.
that's the last time that's happening.
Yeah, I hope she doesn't listen to this one. All right, Warner Brothers also had some release date news, and these will be the last release dates that we talk about because I know that this can only go so far. But Wonder Woman got an official date of June 23rd, 2017, and Justice League and Justice League will be coming November 17th, 2017. So
that's a holy day. Holy day, and you're fucking with it.
Yeah. So we'll get Batman, Superman this year, Suicide Squad this year. Hopefully they don't poison the well. I want to be so excited for this DC movie universe, and it is. I just have my fingers crossed, I guess is what I'm saying.
I hear
Worst birthday ever.
All right. So from DC movies, I need to go to DC Comics. We don't do comics news here very often because we don't like to leave Brent out. But current.
Yes, you do.
The current Batman creative team. I'm going to be crying in just a second, Brent, after I say this. The current Batman creative team of Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. They've been on the team for about 5 years since the New 52 relaunch at the end of 2011. They are. It was announced that they are leaving the title when DC relaunches. DC, Dan DiDio and Jim Lee, the co-publishers of DC Comics, they both teased DC Comics Rebirth again this summer. And talking about this DC Comics Rebirth and the all-new, all-different Marvel is a totally different and longer topic. But it makes me a little sad to see these two leaving Batman because legitimately, aside from Frank Miller, I don't think anyone has given me more or better Batman comics than Snyder and Capullo over the last 5 years.
Consistently, too. That's the best part.
Yeah, it's been consistently good. Every issue, and even the issues that tie the arcs together, so the stuff that would normally be called a filler issue in other books, have been great, legitimately great from Snyder and Capullo. So we do have some hope. Snyder will be moving over to Detective Comics. So I'm still excited to see what he can do. I'm very nervous about what this DC Comics Rebirth is and what it means for that universe, whether or not it's going to stay similar to what they've been doing over the last the last 6 months or so, which has been kind of encouraging to get more diverse faces into DC Comics and to do like new and brighter and somewhat more optimistic stories than DC has done in the past. But the story was broken on Bleeding Cool, and they said this about Snyder's move to Detective. Detective Comics will remain a monthly title, and that's in reference to Batman, the book he's leaving, becoming a bi-monthly. They're going to sell it twice a month to try and kind of cash in on the sales of that book. It'll remain a monthly title. The decision to switch books is more likely to be able to remove Snyder from the event-driven nature of some modern comics and the pressure of writing the lead Bat book and DC's best-selling title. He will be more able to do as he pleases with the character. And this is just Bleeding Cool editorializing, but I really hope that that's true. If you give Snyder free reign over Batman and the Bat books, I will probably read that book forever. He's one of my favorite writers, and I'm looking forward to it. Mm-hmm. So with this DC Comics Rebirth and the all-new, all-different Marvel, I'm not going to get really into it because I don't want to be negative. I want to be optimistic. I want to be positive. But superhero comics don't have me excited right now. And one of the main reasons why is that we have all these great adaptations of movies and television. And when a kid walks into a local comic book shop, they don't really see those versions of the characters on the shelves, especially when it comes to Marvel. Right now, Steve Rogers is not Captain America. Thor, Odin's son, is not Thor. Tony Stark is not Iron Man. So right now in the comics, if you like the Avengers in the movies, they are not the Avengers in the comics, and that's kind of tough. We all kind of touched on our love of local comic shops and how it got us to walk down this path. And if kids walk in and don't see what they want and walk right back out, it makes it difficult, I think. So.
Yeah, I think there's enough information on the internet. I bet a kid is more likely to Wikipedia this stuff, long enough to understand that. Depending upon how, I guess, the age that we're talking about that.
Yeah, that is a really good point.
But yeah, it is something Marvel will have to somehow address to continue driving that market. So
yeah, and that is a really good point. I guess I might be thinking about it too much from like a retailer standpoint of these stores won't exist if kids can't go in and find what they're looking for. So anyway, moving back to TV, the X-Files returned on Sunday to crazy huge ratings. 13.5 million viewers viewed the premiere episode. I haven't seen it premiered on Sunday right after the NFC Championship game, which is obviously going to give it a boost in ratings.
I guess, but that game was such dog shit that I think, I honestly, I went to bed. I DVR'd the X-Files, but had the game been captivating and had been exciting to the end, I may have stayed up and watched X-Files, and instead I was like, oof, I'm going to bed.
You're totally right. You're totally right. It debuted on Sunday, and then they aired episode 2 of the 6-episode run right on Monday. So I haven't seen what the ratings have been, like the carryover ratings into Monday, but it's a good sign. And honestly, a high-quality kind of prestige version of the X-Files, I don't think there's anybody who listens to this show that isn't down for that.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, having watched the first episode, there were times. Have either of you seen it?
No.
I didn't watch it yet. I'm kind of waiting to get a couple in the bank.
There were times where the dialogue just seemed so over the top, like it was trying so hard to recapture the angry Scully and Mulder pissing contest. It happened very quickly in the show and then happened again, and it seemed a little pretentious, but I like the storyline enough so far. I haven't seen episode 2.
So did you watch the X-Files original run? Or since then, I'm not saying, did you watch it live on the televisions when it was beamed from a station into the airwaves and we grabbed it like cavemen?
Yeah, I will openly admit how devoted a fan I was for the first 3-4 seasons, and how quickly I fell off and did not keep up with the mythology.
I was the same way.
I think I saw the first film, but I'm pretty sure there was a second, and I have not seen it. So part of me wanted to find a good YouTube summary of everything that happened. But I also knew that the relaunch was probably banking on a bunch of people not really remembering the first story. So it was fine to just jump into.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually was even a more casual fan than that the first time around, where I would catch single episodes, or you would read recaps in Wizard magazine or crap like that. But I really want.
Wizard magazine was awesome.
Wizard magazine was awesome. I'm gonna go back and watch these 6 episodes of this new revamp, and if it's really compelling or it causes me to ask a lot of questions, I'll go back and the whole series, all 10 seasons, are on Netflix right now for the X-Files. The main problem is, and I've talked about this before, is that it's very difficult for me to commit myself to 22 episode seasons.
That's a lot of binging.
Yeah, and honestly, what I might do is
gorging.
Yeah, Kumail Nanjiani has the X-Files podcast, and I honestly might either go to that podcast or go to a fan site from someplace and cherry pick the best episodes from each season and watch it that way. So that way I can get the main gist of the storyline and do a greatest hits, so I don't have to sit through, because it's probably 200 episodes roughly of television, and that's tough to get through.
That's a lot. Yeah,
it's tough to get through. All right. Next up we have Harrison Ford, our favorite mumbly Han Solo, maybe cyborg, has been confirmed for Blade Runner 2. So that's exciting, right?
That is exciting.
I honestly, like, I was so... we've discussed on this very here podcast how I think I have more love for Blade Runner than potentially the other two of you gentlemen.
Right.
So Blade Runner 2 was kind of like saying, hey, we're going to run over your whole family with a truck and then set it on fire.
Yeah.
However, Harrison Ford left a very bad taste in my mouth with his legacy with the potential Indiana Jones film that was never released, thankfully. I think it was supposed to star, who was that annoying, Shia LaBeouf, and then they canceled it, thankfully, right before it was.
Yeah, that one they canceled. I remember it was
right.
It was
but
weird.
we saw his performance, and there was a refrigerator, and he really just kind of shit all over his legacy. So that Harrison Ford, very much not excited about. Star Wars Harrison Ford, I was actually kind of blown away. We talked about this at length, how good he was there. So this might give me a little hope for Blade Runner 2. I still think it's a stupid idea.
So guys, I have this fan theory. I really think this is going to happen. So Harrison Ford famously wanted Han Solo to die at the end of Return of the Jedi, right? And he had to wait 30 years for it to happen.
Right.
So maybe that energy, that I really need my legacy to die.
He's going to kill Deckard? Is that what you're going with?
Exactly. Maybe that led over to all famous Harrison Ford characters. So now we got spoilers, people.
Yeah.
Han Solo, he finally killed Han Solo. Now we're gonna get dead Deckard, and we're gonna get Indy 5, where he maybe falls.
Is it murder suicide? He kills Shia LaBeouf and then kills himself in apology for the movie that was never released and wasn't a part of the Indiana Jones franchise.
Yeah. It was just Indy 5 is just a ritual suicide. It's like 11 minutes and then it ends.
I actually feel really good about that. That would save a lot of the shame.
And then you know what? At that point, he's not going to stop. They're just going to continue paying him like $25 to $50 million a movie to do these.
Like go back and redo, like we'll have Air Force 1 2, where he goes back and like kills himself as the president.
Where the plane goes down.
No.
We'll get the Fugitive 2, where he goes, it was me, it wasn't the one-armed man, and then he's executed.
Oh,
I'm just saying, we have an opportunity to go back.
This would be an amazing close to Harrison Ford's career. If he just goes back and murders all of his characters.
Yeah, he goes back and goes, guys, remember how much you loved me? Fuck all of you.
I'm dead now.
None of this is going to work. You guys are nuts.
I'm just
move
telling
on,
you.
please.
It could work. It could work.
No.
All right. Speaking of something that could work, but I'm not sure that it will, DC's Legends of Tomorrow premiered this week. I did not watch it, but there was a pretty great interview with Brandon Routh on Fat Man on Batman with Kevin Smith. And they do a lot of pitching of this show, and they do a lot of talking about Ray Palmer and the Atom, but they also do a lot of talking about the Superman casting process and the process of getting that movie made. And as I just watched Death of Superman Lives, based on Brent's recommendation from last week, it was very interesting to me to hear about another Superman movie getting made and the casting of a Superman and how does that happen? How do you cast a Superman and make sure that it's going to work? Because it's a $400 million gamble based on, the cost of making the movie and marketing. So that was really interesting to me. Are you guys excited in any way about DC's Legends of Tomorrow?
No.
I'm not excited about anything DC that's not Batman.
Well, Flash. You like Flash.
That's a great point. I do like Flash.
And it's made by the same guys.
But conversely, I really don't like Arrow.
So, so it is kind of 50-50.
Yeah, but you're right. I do actually really like the Flash series that's ongoing that actually just started back up last week.
Yeah.
And we've got a new episode coming up tomorrow, to pull back the curtain.
Yeah.
But yeah, the things I like the Flash for, I don't like in the same presentation in Arrow, and I think by all circumstances they're pretty similar shows. So a third show like that, I guess, is just another 50-50 gambit. So I'll give it a loose call. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and to be fair to Legends of Tomorrow, I do really like Brandon Routh as Ray Palmer. I like him as kind of like a super earnest, bumbling kind of scientist where he's like Tony Stark without any of the sarcasm.
Yeah, and the Atom has had a lot of great appearances in some of the really nice JLA books. Tower of Babel comes to mind, and one of the other kind of whole Justice League books. the Atom has some great kind of moments in those books where everyone else is like the super flashy, amazing face puncher guy, and the Atom just comes through and he's like, you know what, I'm just going to science the shit out of some stuff. And they've been very fun moments.
That is great. And honestly, if you mix the Atom sciencing some shit out of some stuff with some time travel, I mean, you really can't go wrong.
No.
So, the last thing that we have tonight, I always kind of like to end on some esoteric bullshit. But Stan Lee, everybody's favorite pop culture grandpa, talked about what he thought was the best superpower. And this is not a discussion we've had, so I really like to have it quickly. Granted, Stan Lee was promoting his new show, which is called The Lucky Man, but he said that the best superpower of all is luck. And that's a bullshit, stupid answer based on what he's promoting right now. I love Stan Lee, but he would give a better answer if he wasn't shilling some nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm curious, and I want to open it up. One superpower, what do you guys think the best one is?
I mean, it's got to be flight.
No.
What can't you accomplish with flight?
A lot of stuff.
Like
many things.
Like
Many
what?
things. But if you have flight but no other superpower, you're still weak as fuck. Like, you can't lift a car.
Well, I guess, bro, do you even lift? Like, hit the gym, get some steroids, get you some HGH. Like, you can get pretty jacked. Like, have you seen the competitions? Like, you can do stuff.
Yeah, you're gonna lift a green car while people run.
It's all about leverage. Like, yeah, I'm not saying you're gonna throw a car around, but like fighting people, all you have to do is know a little bit of judo, and then as soon as you take them like 15 feet in the air, he's gonna shit his pants.
Brent?
Talking about leverage, I think the clear and abundantly obvious answer on the best superpower is telepathy.
I'm gonna disagree with you again there, Johnny.
Really?
I really am. Go ahead, give me.
Yeah, because then I dangle you up in the air.
What?
I just fly you up. Yeah, I know. I fly you up in the middle of the air, and then what does your telepathy get you? Like, I can read his mind. He's gonna fly me up 500 feet and drop me on my face.
No, I'm gonna influence your mind to let me down calmly, and
you
then
want
go.
Mind control. Okay.
Oh, mind control.
Sorry, not telepathy.
Mind control.
Yes.
Okay.
I was going Professor X. What else did they call his abilities?
No, I mean, mind control is the best one of his powers. That's true.
You're going Kilgrave from Jessica Jones.
My fault. Yes, yeah. I want the power
to influence people,
of mind reading and influencing everyone's actions and knowing their deepest, darkest secrets and just manipulate people at my will. Yes.
Jessica Jones makes a great argument for that being the best villain superpower of all time, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not saying my superpower would turn me into a superhero at all.
Is Brent a villain?
I think it's been obvious from day one, guys.
You do have a great voice for villain monologues. I will say that.
You've got a great voice for villainy.
Thank you. I've
my answer
cited that on resumes.
just one bullet point that says
great
villain.
Voice for villainy.
So my answer has actually been swayed a bit, and I'm gonna say a word that
swayed. I don't think that's swayed. A superpower, dude.
Just like crushed velvet.
My weakness is rain.
Rain is your kryptonite.
By swayed, I mean influence. By SWAYED. No, so influenced by, and I'm gonna say Topher's kryptonite word, cracked. God. So there's an episode of Cracked After Hours where they have this discussion, and they come out with the answer that I've always had from the start. It's the ability to control time, to stop time, because when you can stop time and control time, I don't care how well you can fly, Toph, or how well you can control people's minds, Brent. I'm just gonna stop time and I'm gonna point you right on your nose.
Yeah, the flashes show that doesn't actually work. So, in a world that you can stop time, there's a world where someone can, shift very quickly to the point where it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, if I am the only one in the world that has a superpower, that's the one I want.
The idea that I could take like a week's vacation in between lunch and my first 1 o'clock meeting sounds really good. Like I'm into that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
I mean, you'd totally have enough time to watch all 12 seasons of X-Files or whatever there is.
Exactly.
So,
or
and
read a
you
book.
can influence the outcome of every interaction you have for the rest of your life.
Or just
you
read a
stop
book.
time, make things happen the way you want them to happen. The way that they do that on the show, on the episode of After Hours, is they reference the Zach Morris timeout, and that makes it seem way less superhero-y.
It makes it seem way more douchey.
Yeah. So
I recall that they make it seem like no one ever realized just how incredibly powerful Zach is. After all that, yeah, nice.
So with the ability to stop time, you know what I would do, guys? I would go and read all of my favorite books from all of my favorite authors, and we're going to talk about that in our B segment. We'll be right back.
Today's show is brought to you by Amazon. Go to popnerdery.com/Amazon, shop as you normally would, get the same Amazon you know and love, while you get to support Pop Nerdery.
So, Toph, next time you recommend a giant coffee table book about the Coen brothers, I can go to popnerdery.com/Amazon?
And buy 2 copies. Pop Nerdery is part of the Amazon Associates program. It means you get the same selection and low prices of Amazon you know and love. If you're a Prime member, you get the exact same 2-day shipping that you already compulsively buy things when you're shopping, and you support Pop Nerdery. That's it. This is simple.
Click. Oh, sorry, Toph. I was already bookmarking popnerdery.com/Amazon.
Dave, you did something right then. But bookmark popnerdery.com/Amazon in your favorite browser today. And remember, every time you're going to Amazon to compulsively buy things, popnerdery.com/Amazon. Welcome back to the Pop Nerdery Podcast. Here in our B segment, like a ravenous virus, we're going to infect our host cells, begin to rapidly duplicate, and slowly take over our host until we've consumed all of its nutrients. In this case, the nutrients of our favorite authors. As
But
you know,
I'm the host of the PopNerdery Podcast.
Yeah, we're going to take all your nutrients.
Don't take my nutrients.
I'm going to wear you like a suit. A metaphorical suit of ideas.
That got creepier than I thought it would.
Right? See? Never doubt that I can take the B segment analogy into weird places.
There we go.
We wanted to talk about our favorite authors here. We discussed last episode, in episode 10. Fearless listeners, if you haven't listened, go back but we talked a lot about where we kind of originated as nerds and the things that were important to us. And I think one of the things that felt a little underserved was probably one of the things that every nerd does, maybe more so than a lot of the rest of society, and that's read books, be they fiction, nonfiction, comics, articles, something. It's that quest for information that sets us apart. And we wanted to talk about some of our favorite authors who put that out there.
Yeah, and Toph, when you brought up this topic, that was one of the first things I noticed that I didn't notice when, until you asked, was that I don't read a lot of fiction books. Almost all of the fiction that I read is graphic novel, comic book, things like that. I read a lot of fiction when I was younger. I read a lot of YA fiction. I read all the stuff that you were required to read in school, and enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. But I noticed that for me personally, when I dive into a book, it's almost like that's me eating my vegetables, and I enjoy it, and I find the good vegetables to eat. But I haven't, and I could really use a lot of recommendations for fiction authors to get into. So I'm looking forward to this conversation as a way for me to put a bunch of stuff into onto the list that I should be reading.
Yeah, and I think that I do a very similar thing, and I think that it's going to be kind of a universal concept. We all watch trashy things. I also read trashy things.
Okay.
I consume a lot of fiction murder mysteries that take me all of 16 hours to read, and they're probably bad for my brain, but they're delicious. And so if my brain had a waistline, there would be nothing but packing love handles onto the ass end of my brain. There's no benefit to them, but I still like consuming them in the same way that I will often sit down and watch 15 minutes of Cops.
Honestly, that's what I need. So I really need comfort food books to where I can sit down at night and blast through a murder mystery or a detective story or something like that in the same way that I can blast through a graphic novel in 3 nights worth of the half hour before bed.
Well, Dave, I've got great news for you because my recommendations are all trash fiction. So,
Wonderful.
Bang, bang.
All right.
So I wanted to talk about, again, we're setting this up as our favorite authors. So this is by no means saying that, everything this author has done we love or is our favorite or whatever else. But that person, although now that I look at my list, all of my authors are dead. So I was going to say that person, when they put out a book, you're very excited about it. My people won't be putting out books anytime soon until Earth 2 and Earth 1 finally merge and my metaverse is complete.
I mean, you never know. Your favorite authors could be like J.D. Salinger with a bunch of nonsense in safes buried under their basement.
Every day I wake up and scan the headlines and wait for that to happen.
Yep.
So, Brent, I want to start with you. Who is an author that you feel like people should be reading because of a thing you love?
Okay. I will go kind of in my own chronological order of my exposure to these authors, if that's fair.
Yeah.
One of my first, I guess, favorite authors, just because of my exposure in most cases to the movies first and then the books that inspired them, is Roald Dahl.
Nice.
Very nice.
James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Charlie and the Glass Elevator, Fantastic
the DFG coming
Mr. Fox, the
DFG,
which is coming out soon, Witches.
Yes.
All of those movies and or stories were fun and fantastic and silly, and a lot of his short story stuff kind of hits home. I was lucky enough to find a wife who actually had a similar love for him, and we have a short stories book upstairs that we read to my children, and it's just silly, goofy stuff. A lot of it still holds up. Sometimes is a little darker than I guess I'm realistically comfortable talking through.
Some of that stuff is actually really challenging.
Yeah.
Dave Champion in the World has a widower father who is also a part-time criminal.
Right.
Some of this stuff has a fairly dark premise.
Yeah, he has a dark sense of humor, and I definitely do too. So I think that's kind of why it hits home with me. He wrote for Playboy for a while, and wrote pretty macabre adult stories for that. So it's that world. Even though I was exposed to some of the kids stuff. As I learned more, I found out why his stuff kind of kept on hitting. So that's my first one that I'll plant for you.
So I have two questions for you. The first one is which one of them, if you can pick a favorite, tell me which one is your favorite.
Because it's been a long time since I read any of the actual novels, the one that I remember the most probably is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I just love that. What?
That's never a bad answer.
Yeah, and I just love that movie. That I think that holds kind of a special place, even though the movie and the book are far different from one another. So
if you had to introduce, I think that probably a lot of people will be very familiar with some of the other media, but I'm guessing there are folks who probably actually haven't ever read some of these books, if not a lot of them. If you had to say, all right, here's the place that I think I would jump into this, if you like his writing, where would you send them?
Yeah, any of the collections of short stories, specifically ones that they've done that are I think the one we have upstairs is just called Roald Dahl Collected Stories or something along that line.
Nice.
And excuse me, the Collected Short Stories of Dahl. I think that's exactly which one I'm talking about. It's just got lots of fun stuff to read in there. So that's the place to go, and if any of that stuff hits home, then you will like
more.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to tag up on this. There's a great biography of Roald Dahl, who was actually a secret agent during World War II.
Nice. I love hearing shit like that. I love hearing about the secret lives of people who had totally different careers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a secret agent during World War II, spied for the British. kind of successfully. It wasn't great. There were some screw-ups there. But, you have a guy who's obviously incredibly creative, and you put him into a world where he, has to spy a little bit and be a diplomat and an intelligence officer. So I highly recommend checking out that biography as well, because as someone who I like his works too, but then you actually find out Roald Dahl was out there fucking putting on his James Bond shit out in World War II. I see.
Yeah, cool.
Right.
I need to check that out.
That's really awesome. I would really like to write a historical fiction book with Roald Dahl just bombing around Europe, making shit happen during World War II.
He would be a very fascinating character to turn into, like a Robert Langdon of the Dan Brown. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah, I feel really good about that. So Dave, I'm gonna sing you out here. Give me an author that you love so hard.
Okay, I'm gonna flip to the other side, and I'm gonna talk about prose nonfiction. Like I said, the majority of the book reading that I have done, and will continue to do, typically is like eating your vegetables. It tackles a subject that maybe I didn't think to go that deep on, or you read news stories about and you think you understand, but one of my favorite authors is a guy who puts these stories into context by giving you real life examples and real life stories, and takes you through them almost like reading a mystery novel or reading a short story. And that guy is Michael Lewis. I mentioned Michael Lewis a couple weeks ago when I gave the awesome recommendation of bookcases.
Which still is a good recommendation.
Right, which segued into reread stuff you've already read. And for me, a lot of the stuff that I like to reread that falls into this, kind of prose nonfiction is Michael Lewis books. So the first book that got me hooked was Moneyball, and it was a great gateway into prose nonfiction because it was about baseball, and I was already past mildly obsessed to regular obsessed about baseball at the time when I started reading this, which was my freshman year of college, as I was moving into the world of sports journalism. So that's what I did when I was in college. I was predisposed to liking that book, and I found that the way that he tells stories is a way that I could read a story about him talking about the inner workings of the Fed just as many times as I could read a story about him talking about why there are some pieces of baseball statistics that are undervalued and why that's important to me.
Now, to be fair, didn't he also write The Blind Side?
He did write The Blind Side, and I get that reaction from people all the time. The book is not like the movie.
You can because I know it's
Yes.
split, right? It's 50-50 about how linebackers like Lawrence Taylor, right,
Yes.
changed
Yep.
the blocking scheme and schematics and everything.
Correct.
The second half is the Michael Oher story, right?
Yeah, so it kind of it goes chapter by chapter, kind of in the same way if you've read Moneyball,
Right.
where he takes full chapters and dives into one player and why there are inefficiencies surrounding that one player. He does the same thing in Blindside, where chapter by chapter you'll get Michael Oher's story, which is great and honestly is a legitimately great story. Michael Oher is playing in the Super Bowl this week for the Carolina Panthers. Next week, the Carolina Panthers, and the other half is the kind of the X's and O's and the market inefficiencies and the rise of, the left tackle being an important position, which for me was a different way to look at the economics of football. For me, I grew up idolizing Walter Payton, so the most important position you could possibly play was running back.
Obviously.
No.
And in today's NFL, that couldn't be less true.
Right.
So it was. He's a guy that kind of opens up different ways for me to think about things, whether it is baseball, football, or it is leadership. He wrote it's a very small book and a very quick read called Coach, about his Little League baseball coach. That is a fantastic read. Or it dives into either political or more current event stuff, where he wrote The Big Short. He wrote Flash Boys. He wrote Liar's Poker. all of these books about diving into the financial markets and Wall Street, and not necessarily uncovering. He's not like a breaking news journalist in books, but he does do a really nice job of telling the story in a way that makes it compelling in the one hand, but also easy to understand for. Obviously, I am not a wizard of the financial markets, so I need somebody to break it down and tell me why, for example, high-frequency traders are screwing their investors that they're supposed to represent.
He can take a complex subject and make it not only compelling but also understandable. Exactly,
and he does it in a way that it makes you feel like you're pulling back, you're pulling back layers every time you turn the page.
All right, so favorite book from Michael Lewis?
So my favorite is still the first that I read, and it's Moneyball, and that's a book that you can go back and read today, and it's still valid because while a lot of baseball has turned around on using logic and reason and statistics to make decisions, when you listen to a television broadcast, you still don't get a lot of that. So if you're a baseball fan that watches a lot of baseball games every year, you still don't necessarily really understand how your front office is probably making decisions at this point.
It's pure gibberish.
And it's endlessly rereadable. The movie adaptation was also pretty good. So Moneyball is my favorite, but I will tell you that no matter what the topic, even if it is as seemingly dry as high-frequency trading in the financial markets, he still does a really nice job of making it readable. And the audiobook of Flash Boys, which was the last book I just mentioned, is read by Dylan Baker, and Dylan Baker has an awesome voice.
So if someone hasn't ever read any of his works before, what's their entry point? What's the one you're saying, here's a good representative book from him?
I think the easiest route in is one of the sports books. So it's either Coach or Big Blind Side or Moneyball.
Okay.
It's more difficult to tell somebody, hey, jump into this book about the financial markets.
The financial crisis, yeah.
Right. But if you like the way that he tells a story, he'll make it easy for you to understand whatever kind of.
Well, truly, he does a better job of explaining that than a lot of people have attempted to tell that story, and he does as good a job as probably anyone.
Yeah, and honestly, I'd like to see Michael Lewis have an hour-long documentary series where he puts out 6 to 12 hour-long documentaries on HBO.
You should call it HBO.
Yeah, we call HBO and write him a giant check. Like I would pay for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. I was trying to come up with more superlatives, and I was just like, you know what? The best answer is just yes. Yes, that's what I want.
So what about you, Toph?
All right, Toph. Yeah.
Where do you want to go?
So I am the oldest human being, not only on this podcast, but potentially on Earth. So my first favorite author that I want to talk about is Ernest Hemingway, who has been dead for 50 years.
I like that. That's a great pick.
I love Ernest Hemingway, and I love him more so maybe than a lot of the other authors I like, is that so many people have a visceral reaction. Like you say, like to someone, one of my favorite authors is Michael Lewis. They'll go, okay, what did he write? You say, one of my favorite authors is Ernest Hemingway, and they go, holy shit, I tried to read 10 pages of Old Man in the Sea, and I had a fucking stroke.
Yeah, Ernest Hemingway was one of those guys that really illustrated for me what it is to be a strong journalist.
Mm-hmm.
To not let your verbosity and your intellect get in the way of you telling a succinct story.
Economy of style.
Yes, absolutely, and that is, he is the guy that they bring up in J School when they say, listen, this is a guy who can get the story across and can do it in a way that you're not showing off, you're not using $10 words, you are not going on for pages and pages.
No, and this is a guy who, wrote a lot about a lot of world events that happened, but beyond that, actually participated in them. This is a dude who voluntarily participated in 2 world wars, and then wrote a book about wanted to write a book about bullfighting, so went and fought bulls. Like, we're all like, I love a lot of the journalists that are happening right now that are standing around and watching things happen, and they're in very dangerous places, and they're, reporting on dangerous things. This is a dude who voluntarily fought in 2 world wars so we could report on it.
Hey,
Like,
I'd like to see Geraldo Rivera try to fight a bull.
I would too.
That'd be fun.
I would start a GoFundMe page for that to happen. Like, I'm into that. If you read a lot of Hemingway is either a style that works for you or doesn't, and that's okay. And I don't want to debate that. But my point is, like, this is a dude who lived a life that was incredible, founded a literary movement, and wrote some incredibly compelling books along the way.
And I would argue that if it's a literary style that doesn't work for you, I would strongly encourage you to read enough of it until it does, because it really helped me understand. It really helped me understand how to make a point and how to when you're in a meeting or you are talking to somebody to be persuasive and succinct.
Yeah, it's compelling without any kind of floweriness. There's no extra when it comes to Hemingway. He's going to deliver a story about, he literally went and fought in the First World War, fell in love with an ambulance corps member in Italy after basically almost nearly being exploded a couple times, and then had his heart broken and wrote a book about it, and still managed to, like, having actually experienced these things, still coming up and just going, I'm going to deliver the story as it is and leaving it compelling.
So, Toph, what is your absolute favorite Ernest Hemingway work?
I almost like everything he's ever done, but truly my favorite is A Movable Feast, talking about his time on Paris's left bank, where probably a collection of no less than 5 writers who show up in historical textbooks were all living and working together in Paris. Like, if you think about that now, Dan Brown isn't going to pop up in an American history textbook in 50 years. And I like his books. He's great. But, Gertrude Stein and F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway were all hanging out, getting bombed in, writing in the 30s on the left bank. Like, that's pretty astounding. And it's a telling of that time, which to me is fascinating.
Yeah, and I think it's also really telling to understand, like, they knew that you had to experience some shit in order to be able to write a great work like that.
Yeah, you can't. You can report on anything by standing on the sidelines. You have to be involved in something to really write about it.
Yeah, and to write fiction set in that era.
Specifically fiction. Yeah. Like, you can report on anything by being near it. However, to actually be able to comprehend and ingest and then expel out an idea that has any kind of narrative fiction to it, you actually have to be involved in it. Yeah.
So where's my entry point to Hemingway?
So this is tough because, like I said, a lot of people are exposed to The Old Man and the Sea, and I do think that that's one of my favorite Hemingway works, just because it is, again, it kind of is a distillation of his style. But a lot of people were forced to read that, and I know that turns a lot of people off. Yeah. So I would say I'm going to be a little wishy-washy and say either a Farewell to Arms or Death in the Afternoon, both of which came out well before The Old Man and the Sea, but are kind of a very similar stylistic book.
Okay. All right.
So Brett, give me the next one on your list.
Okay. I have not read a lot of his stuff. And again, I was driven to even consider him because of my exposure to some of his stories in films first. But what I have read from Chuck Palahniuk, I have enjoyed is an odd word to use sometimes. But I love the way his stories make me think and how tangible a reaction words can get out of me when I read some of his stuff.
Do you like Hemingway?
Me?
Yeah.
I barely remember. I'm one of those people. Old Man and the Sea was forced upon me.
Yep.
And I couldn't make it through it, and so I bombed all those quizzes.
Because if there was a direct descendant stylistically in the way he does narrative fiction, those two styles are very similar.
I would say that so Hemingway is quick and to the point and is kind of visceral in the way that, like, you get a reaction from him. But I would say that Chuck Palahniuk, I read Fight Club, and it was more like grueling. It kind of it sits like in the pit of your stomach when you read
Yes. Yes. And it's funny because I there were two other ones that I considered for this recommendation, and that's John Steinbeck and George Orwell, and both of them have that type style of writing as well.
Yeah, Orwell's on my list too.
Steinbeck is on mine.
Yeah.
There you go.
I reread Animal Farm like once a year. It's only 110 pages
Such
or whatever.
an easy read.
It's
And
like a half an hour.
it was Animal Farm was my
Good writing.
Animal Farm was my first exposure to satire, as it was for probably a lot of people because I read it in like the 6th grade or whatever you're supposed to read it, and I reread it every year because it is perfect.
It's gorgeous,
and it is it's perfect in its brevity also. So it's 100 pages. You can devour it in an afternoon, and it really gets across the point that he is trying to make that again, power corrupts, and that is a thing that's hard to make a 6th grader understand. And I think that because of the fact that book and George Orwell has been able to make 6th and 8th and 9th graders with between Animal Farm and 1984 and some of his other works he's been able to do that for people that are in their early teenage years is a testament to just how good he was, because it's difficult to get people of that age to understand the world as it is because they don't know it, and I will readily admit that I didn't fully understand that book until I was in the workforce for a couple of years. Like I read it every year until this year specifically. I've read it again this year, and I really truly didn't understand it until maybe 2 to 3 years ago. And I bet you 10 years from now I'll tell you I didn't understand it right now.
Probably. And that's especially when you look at Chuck's entry into publishing as Fight Club, like that all specifically by itself is an incredible feat. When Fight Club is your first book, like, you did okay. So like you got Fight Club, Choke, Lullaby, and Diary are probably the most well-known. Which one of those would you say, well, not even of those, which of his books would you say are your favorite?
Well, my favorite book of his is Fight Club, and it's fun even for, I have not read a ton of his books. The only other one that you didn't mention that I have read is Haunted. And that book is
fantastic.
It starts off hard, like,
and then somehow almost gets worse.
Right. If you are somebody who gets ill very easily, I wouldn't recommend reading.
Maybe not Haunted for you.
Yeah, but yeah, Fight Club is probably my favorite of his novels. Again, I was exposed to the movie first, and it's cool because I think I've even heard him admit that like some of the choices they made in the movie were better than things he did in the book, and he's almost kind of bowed in reverence to some of the decisions that got made by Fincher.
Fincher.
Spike Jonze? No, Fincher.
In Fight Club 2, he's putting out as a graphic novel where he gets to basically take a lot of those decisions and then write on top of them again. So I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, ditto.
If I have only ever read Fight Club, which one should I go to next? You guys knowing me, where should I go next for Chuck Palahniuk?
Lullaby?
Lullaby or Choke would be either one. 50-50 in my mind.
Have you read Survivor, Toph? Because that was almost greenlit as a movie, but then I think after the events of 9/11, they got a little weary on that one.
With the Death Cult, the Death Cult is usually a tough sell after an event like that. After
a 9/11 happens.
Yeah, that's not easy.
A little tough.
But Lullaby, I think I don't know. I think you could do.
Okay.
It's all of his stuff is really pretty morbid, but they have like that dark black humor a lot of times throughout, which
they're all funny. Like they're all horrible and funny.
Right. Because I'm a terrible person.
If they weren't funny, they wouldn't be it's like reading like James Joyce or Faulkner or something like that, where it's all fucking punishing. And with Chuck, it's just, it's going to be terrible, but there are also going to be those moments of just like, it's kind of like almost like a Tarantino film where you're like, oh God, this is all so, I shouldn't be laughing at this, but I am.
But
and it's
funny.
that beautiful release that lets you go on this up, down, up, down, up, down journey.
Yeah. And it's a shame, I think, that I've only read, I think, 4, maybe even just 3. Let's see. No, I've read 4, so only 4 of a pretty decent bibliography at this point.
Yeah,
so
dude's prolific. Like, I haven't read everything that he's done. I'm sure there are some people who pride themselves on that, but yeah, he's got like 18 books starting from 96 on. So he's done okay. He's been busy.
So
honestly, Dave, your second one was Orwell, and you felt like you kind of talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, Orwell was he was and is to this day still something that I revisit a lot. A guy
cool.
and his work that I revisit a lot.
And the only reason I didn't go with it is because I've only read Animal Farm and know the plot of 1984. I haven't even read it, so
yeah.
I love to get a good 2-minute hate on. It starts my day off right.
And well, honestly, 1984 is a book that you could reread, or you could read for the first time today, and literally go, hey, well, I've seen some of that stuff in my my end user licensing agreement for iTunes.
This is kind of the same thing for all those things I just click on at random. Yeah. They're the same.
Yeah. It's scary, and he wrote that book in the late 1940s.
1949.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And it is.
49.
It's a little scary how well he kind of nailed our future.
Yeah, it's awful.
As one of my favorite authors, Russ Cole, said, "Time is a flat circle."
Flat circle. Toph.
So as Brent touched on earlier, my second selection is John Steinbeck, the unsinkable John Steinbeck.
Nice.
This again is a person who helped to found a literary movement, took kind of the ball from Hemingway, moved it on through the Dust Bowl and further into the even into the mid '60s. Mm-hmm. It's another guy who I think the style of prose either suits you or it doesn't. You either get it or you don't. I think it's a shame that Steinbeck is taught in schools almost, and I love the guy, but forcing Grapes of Wrath on kids is a bad decision.
I totally agree, because Steinbeck is a guy who, like, in Of Mice and Men, I love, and in Grapes of Wrath, I hate. So, and it probably is because you're forcing me to read Grapes of Wrath as a 10th grader, and a 10th grader can't really understand that level, especially a 10th grader that grows up, in a school district that's going to teach that sort of thing in the suburbs. I don't really understand that level of hardship in the world, and it's totally foreign.
No, and I read Let Us Now Praise Famous Men, which is James Agee and Walker Evans, who does photographs. It was part of the New Deal, where they sent out artists and writers to go capture like Dust Bowl families. Yeah. And so it's like it's fucking huge. It's on my shelf somewhere. I mean, the fucking thing is a paperback that's like this thick. It's 600 pages of essay and photos of Dust Bowl families. So I read that like as a narrative, nonfiction, first-hand experience of all these things before I had read Grapes of Wrath. So I had a framework to put that stuff on. Yeah. So, I think I came to that better than a lot of kids who all of a sudden was like, the Great Depression was bad and people were poor and the Dust Bowl was dusty. Now Grapes of Wrath. Like, there's no framework to put that shit on.
Yeah. Can you give me a non-Of Mice and Men or Grapes of Wrath book of Steinbeck's that you love?
So there are a couple. Actually, my nonfiction favorite is Travels with Charlie.
Okay.
Where this is after he's been a successful author. He lives in New York and bounces around, but he basically builds a camper, sticks it on the back of a pickup truck, and goes out with a giant French poodle named Charlie to just kind of like check out and see what's happening in America. And he just slowly travels America of like the mid '60s I think it is. I won't swear to the year, but it's just very much a travel log of the stuff he encounters and talking about, like, obviously this is a guy who is very famous for talking about the American condition in various states.
Yeah.
So, when he just then gets to kind of go back and revisit a lot of the tableau he put fiction to, like with East of Eden and Mice and Men, Grapes of Wrath, Tortilla Flats. I love just kind of like that pulling back the curtain. In terms of fiction, Cannery Row is still one of my favorites. It's just about the slum living in Monterey Bay around the canneries, and you have like this very high-end like California settler. You have this medical community. You just have like the collective of the boys that almost form kind of a Greek chorus to talk about and explain things to the listeners. So as far as fiction goes, Cannery Row, I think, is a great entry point to Steinbeck.
The Winter of Our Discontent is obviously one that I've heard about, but I really have no context for that one. Is that one a poignant read in your opinion?
I mean, yes, it's very, very good. It's kind of so if Grapes of Wrath is on one end of the spectrum about people who are completely kind of destitute and struggling to figure out like how they even get by. Winter of Our Discontent is on the opposite side, talking about Long Island society and like this is what the other people were doing. It almost feels like a companion piece, right? Like you read one, then the other, and both of them make the other one more poignant, if that makes sense.
Because I've always, like, knowing what I know about it, but having never, I never watched the film adaptation that apparently was a made-for-TV movie or, anything like that. I mean, is kind of what's going on, the world they live in that film, anything similar to The Great Gatsby?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it was published in the 60s, so it's a different
way
time
after.
frame. But I mean, it would be the logical conclusion thereof, right? Like you got East Egg, West Egg, and if those things continued, then I think it takes it to that same society. So yes. Okay. All right. I would say that Cannery Row is a better entry point to get a hold of his style of prose, and because his characterization of people is very similar in both of those books. So if you like it in Cannery Row, which is kind of, I don't know, like I said, like I just feel like even though they're different time periods, like Grapes of Wrath is the low end, and it's written to make you almost feel bad, right? Like it is bad. Yeah. It's a bad time and it hurts. This is like the opposite end of like, this is the opposite end of society. Cannery Row kind of comes somewhere in the middle. Like it's a melding of both of those books. So I would say do Cannery Row, and if you're like, I like the way this guy describes America, then I would move to that one.
Okay. Nice.
So John Steinbeck, handsome man, world traveler, friend of Toph.
Very nice.
That's really funny that I picked one of each of yours when I was trying to justify Chuck. My third, because I ruled out Steinbeck and Orwell, just because I find these such quick, like, tasty reads. The whole Robert Langdon series by Dan Brown. The idea of historical fiction to me is just about the only way I can mass consume history and political fact and things like that. So I think Angels and Demons is actually a better book than the Da Vinci Code, even though the Da Vinci Code was more notable. And then I still enjoyed The Lost Symbol, but I have yet to read Inferno. And I never heard good things about his books that came out before the Robert Langdon.
Oh, see, I totally disagree. I quit on both of the later stuff, and I love Deception Point and
Digital Fortress.
Digital Fortress.
Okay.
I actually really like both of those.
Are those Langdon stories, or are those not?
No, they're not. Digital Fortress is all about the NSA and cryptography and other stuff.
Yeah. It's still historical fiction, correct?
It's not really historical. I mean, it's a modern era thing. It's like a crypto fiction kind of thing. Okay. And Deception Point is kind of a foray into sci-fi almost.
Okay.
Okay.
Like they find shit under the ice in Antarctica, and oh man, shit just changed.
Okay.
All right.
So,
I'm totally down for those. And I honestly,
if you liked
only
either
know
of the
them
first
from-
two, then it has the same plotting, the same pace, the same like 6-page chapters.
I think
Yeah.
that's really what it is about Dan Brown, that for somebody, again, podcast listeners, I am a terrible reader. Reading is hard for me. These guys can sit down and actually consume a book quickly. It takes me such a concerted effort not to fall asleep after a paragraph. So the pace of Langdon, or of Dan Brown books, is very much appreciated by me.
Yeah. Well, and to be fair, I don't have 2 kids that I'm putting to bed before I get to start a book.
Yeah, but this was an issue for me when I was 17, so...
All right.
But yeah,
I was trying to give you some credit.
I would totally
Thanks,
recommend going back and doing his earlier stuff too. I actually like his earlier stuff better than I liked the later stuff, simply because I didn't want any more continuation of that story, and I liked his one-offs.
Huh, okay.
Yeah. I honestly, I like Da Vinci Code as a one-off and wish it would have ended there. But
Yeah.
that doesn't make as much money as taking like a Jack Ryan or a Robert Langdon or a, so-and-so.
And
Jack
beating
Reacher.
them to death.
So my last one is kind of like a double pick. I'm going to get 2 for 1 because I'm not going to talk about them very long. But my 2 favorite historical nonfiction authors are Doris Kearns Goodwin.
Obviously.
Doris Kearns Goodwin has written 7 books in the last 40 years, and one of those is a memoir. So really only 6 that are, on historical figures. But every single one of those books is like a 800 or 900 page, fully comprehensive look at. She has focused on American political figures. So she has done a fantastic biography of LBJ, the Kennedys, the Roosevelts, one on Abraham Lincoln and Theodore Roosevelt. So she is someone who has really focused in on looking at people who are historically looked at as very progressive figures in politics, and that's something that particularly is of particular interest to me. So she's somebody that if I want to really do a deep dive on, for example, Abraham Lincoln, I can read Team of Rivals. And
Oh god, Team of Rivals is so fucking good.
Team of Rivals is very good, and they actually, if you watched Daniel Day-Lewis chewing it up as Abe Lincoln, Lincoln was based on the work of Team of Rivals. Her newest book is called The Bully Pulpit, which is about Teddy Roosevelt and the golden age of journalism, and I could not be... I'm very excited, but I need a long family vacation to dive into that one.
Yeah.
I picked it up at the bookstore, and it was heavier than most of the weights that I've lifted in the last couple months.
She does awesome. She doesn't do brief.
Oh yeah, no. Wait, remember when we talked about Hemingway and we talked about brevity? That's not Doris
This
Kearns.
is the opposite. So listeners, I'm going to tell you, I did Team of Rivals as an audiobook. Audible.com/PopNerdery.
It was very good as an audiobook.
Oh, it's fantastic.
The one that I really want to get into even more than the Teddy Roosevelt book is it's the one that she put out in 2000. It's called Every 4 Years, and it looks at the media's presidential campaign coverage for the last 100 years.
Oh yeah.
And that's one that I really, because I'm like a journalism nerd, I really want to look back on that one. The other guy that I want to point out just quickly is Eric Larson.
Yeah.
And I liked The Devil in the White City more than I liked anything else that he wrote. But The Devil in the White City is so good, and I'm from Chicago, so it becomes an even more like heightened level of good because it's a story about my city. That he's worth mentioning just on the strength of that one book. And he also put out In the Garden of Beasts, which is about Nazi Germany and the rise of the Nazi Party in the 40s, the late 30s and the early 40s.
Deadwake, the one that came out this year with the Lusitania.
I actually didn't read that one yet.
Oh, it's good. I highly recommend that.
And I would say if you're going to read one of his books and you're gonna try to get hooked, read Devil in the White City, because In the Garden of the Beast is just a little bit it's a tougher read. It's drier. It's not as good, I guess, is what Topher's trying to say with that hand motion he's doing.
I was gonna let you. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna force my opinion.
No,
on you.
you're right. I agree. It was not as good, and I think that.
But I love Deadwake. So
yeah, and the best sell that I can put on that on Eric Larson is in a world where Serial and making a murderer are super popular. There's no better true crime story that you will read other than Devil in the White City.
I mean, that truly is probably the basis for the popularity of a lot of that shit. So
yeah. Oh yeah,
for sure.
Fantastic. All right, so take us home.
I'm gonna take us home in the weirdest way possible, with the weirdest author himself, Hunter S. Thompson.
Okay.
Ooh.
Yeah, like I celebrate his entire catalog. That's the best way I can probably put it. I think
I appreciate you.
there are a lot of people who probably got to read Fear and Loathing. I know that was assigned to me in a college course, like an early American lit class as part of the observance of Gonzo literature. But, you know, as a person who claimed he never wrote any fiction, it's some of the weirdest shit you're ever going to read in your entire life. And a lot of it is nonsense, and it's fucking gibberish, and it's drug-addled, just fucking bizarreness. But in the points of clarity are so revolutionary. Like, again, you know, I think all three of the authors I've recommended now, Hemingway, brevity, Steinbeck, you know, storytelling, and Thompson, gonzo journalism. Like, those are three guys who have done more for American literature in the past, you know, 100 years than maybe anyone else has. So, like I said, I think a lot of people, you know, obviously the Johnny Depp movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. You have Where the Buffalo Roam with Bill Murray as another one of his adaptations. The Rum Diary, also featuring Depp, but none of them do justice to the original works. Read Hunter S. Thompson. Buy the ticket, take the ride, get fucking weird.
Can you give me the least weird and most accessible entry point?
No.
that was a legitimate question that I didn't think there was an answer to.
It's probably Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Actually, no, I take it back. It's probably actually the Rum Diary. The Rum Diary is the most fictionalized thing, where he went and took a job in Puerto Rico when he was drunk and forgot that he took a job in Puerto Rico until he woke up in Puerto Rico and then was a journalist there for like a year. So I'd actually say the Rum Diary is the least, like, it has the most complete A, B, C arc of maybe any of his books. So I would actually say the Rum Diary is you know, like 120 pages. It's pretty short. I think only 2 people get stabbed and no animals are harmed. So it's like the least weird of all of his books.
Only 2 people get stabbed. They should put that on the back where it says only 2 people get stabbed.
Yeah, like, but I mean, in comparison, like half of Fear and Loathing is about someone waving a marlin spike in someone else's face. So
can we make a T-shirt that just says it's the least weird, and on the back only 2 people get stabbed?
Only 2 people get stabbed. A lot of people go to jail, but yeah, like the Rum Diary is probably the entry point. And then if you get through that and you go, this is weird and I like it, then boy, do you have some things waiting for you.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of, like, when Hemingway spoke on the World Wars, Hunter S. Thompson speaks on the political corruption of the middle of our century that we just finished out, and does it in a way that is both incredibly biting and also strange, because he was, you know, under all the sedation of several heavy drugs, including some from the, you know, glands of an iguana. That's not a joke. That's actually a thing.
It's actually a thing.
Wow.
So there is one guy that I haven't read a lot of, but I'm surprised that no one brought up, and I honestly wanted to pick someone's brain, is that I thought, and because I've seen a lot of movie adaptations that I've enjoyed, Philip K. Dick, and nobody talked about Philip K. Dick, and I don't know if it's worth me diving into if I've seen Blade Runner, or I've seen iRobot, or I've seen things like that. No, iRobot is Asimov.
Yeah, that's Asimov.
Yeah, both of them I think are in our wheelhouse, but Toph, you can probably speak a lot more intelligently than I can.
So I think that reading the books is always a good idea. To be stupid, like, I like the books better than I like the movies for a lot of things. When you're talking specifically, like, you know, obviously Netflix has made Man in the High Castle, and it's good. It's great. I like it a lot, but obviously the book is better. Philip K. Dick also wrote, like, he was in the pulp era.
Yeah, he wrote gobs of short stories,
I mean,
right?
he has tons and tons of shit. But,
It's
like
tough
reading
to sift through.
Minority Report is better in the published, Do Electric Sheep Dream is better than Blade Runner, or at least more complete than Blade Runner, I should say.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Scanner Darkly, that film didn't really work.
This dude's whole career has been put into movie format, so
Right.
I would say that maybe if you liked those movies and you want to explore them more completely, then yes, absolutely. That said, he also wrote a ton of shit that was just like, I get paid by the word, so just like hack some shit out. And not that it doesn't have some merit, but for the most part, it's just like, well, this week I've got to write, 550 words to pay my rent, so I'm just.
And I just saw an article online that says you can actually still make a decent living doing that. There's enough
Seriously?
There's enough work where you can just write garbage sci-fi short stories, and if you find a publisher that keeps paying you, you can make a decent living.
I think I found my next career.
Well, and I feel like it's kind of similar to like with fucking Chandler. Good God.
Yes.
I know words that are things. It's very similar in terms of like, he wrote, I think, just like 7 published novels, but basically revolutionized with Philip Marlowe, the detective character, in the same way that Philip K. Dick kind of revolutionized the sci-fi character, and both of them set up a foundation for every movie that came out from like 1980 on.
Yeah.
If those are things that you're into, if you're into those 80s detective movies, and if you're into, those 80s sci-fi movies, then both of those are authors you should check out.
Yeah. And for me, it's always hard for me to discern, and I guess this is kind of where I'll leave it, it's always hard for me to figure out, do I really want to read the underlying foundation for that, or do I care about the riff that other people did on it? That Spielberg did on that material, or that Ridley Scott did on that material. Is that what I care about?
No, you care about the source material.
Yeah.
We're not Philistines here, Dave. God damn it, we care about the source material.
I'm not saying I don't care. I'm just saying, is the thing that really connects with me their interpretation of it?
That said, you also brought up Asimov, and I would estimate he probably has even more.
It's the same thing, right?
Than
Like
Philip K. Dick, because
built upon Asimov's shoulders, who built upon H.G. Wells, who built upon who built upon.
Right.
Yes. But I do think, if you're going to be doing some deep dives and actually legitimately
you
trying
fall down
to,
that rabbit hole, you can't go wrong with Asimov or H.G. Wells for that matter.
Yeah, great point.
So now that we've recommended the entirety of the English language to you, good luck finishing all that before episode 12. There will be a quiz. Hopefully it'll give you some stuff to go out and check out. If you agree, disagree, want to point out some folks we left out, if there's someone else that you want to talk about as your favorite author in the comment section or on the talkback, we've got good avenues for you to do so. And with that, we'll be right back.
This episode of the PopNerdery Podcast is brought to you by Audible. Go to popnerdery.com/audible and sign up for a free trial. Support the show and get hours of entertainment.
So, Brent, I really like the sound of your voice. Do you read me the audiobooks?
Until I get that 5-year contract that I've been working on with my lawyers from Audible.com, sadly, Dave, no.
You're holding
But
out.
with your Audible free trial, you do get free audiobooks at the number of 2 to start out, and then after the trial ends, you get 1 audiobook a month for $14.95 per month. And then you can also receive 30% off the price of additional audiobook.
That's right, it's the ones you listen to in your car. Audiobooks.
It's a 6-hour reading of the 1995 Toyota Camry Fix It at Home Yourself shop book.
I want a Haynes manual on audiobook.
The diagrams. All right, so this is a little car, and it looks like it's pretty sad, and some of the tires are flat now.
It's read to you by John Goodman. Yes, that John Goodman.
Oh shit, I was listening to that.
No, sorry, we were lying. The other John Goodman. So go to popnerdery.com/audible, sign up for your free trial, tell your friends so they can share in the audiobook goodness.
And welcome back. That was a meaty B section for you, and so we want to give some quick recommendations to each other and to you, the listeners, here in the C segment, and then we'll be out. So, for first-time listeners, this is the part of the show where we just highlight some things to each other that we are going to be checking out soon, or think the other pop nerdery folk should be giving an ear or an eye to as well. And mine's kind of out of left field, but I somehow, through some form of YouTube click,
confluence of events.
Twister that I got myself into, ended up on a game show from the late 1970s and early 1980s called Three's a Crowd. It is a game show that aired for a very short amount of time, probably for very good reason. This is a show that just to me is a perfect little snapshot of what American society used to be that we totally forget in 2016. Whether you get into the political arena or just, older relatives telling you how much better things were back in the day or whatever. Three's a Crowd is just a fascinating look, as far as I'm concerned, into what type of a society existed in 1979 and 1980. This show brought a very male-centric point of view to it, which was customary of those days, and had a man who had on one side his secretary and on his other side his wife. And they bring them out in stages and they ask them questions just like they would on the Newlywed game show, for instance. But it's the secretary trying to match her answers to the man and the wife trying to match her answers to the man. And the cattiness that sometimes shows its face and is sometimes repressed right on the game show is just kind of a freaky but fascinating glimpse into the male-centric world that existed back then. And so, if for no other reason to have something to compare and contrast how much better
how far we've come as a civilization.
Yes. How much better off our women hopefully are, and what type of sleazeballs men can be, especially when they all just coerce each other to be. It's just a fascinating glimpse. So take a chance, gents. Hop on YouTube and research Three's a Crowd, and I guarantee you'll have some shock and awe moments that I had as well.
A funny yet horrifying watch.
Yes. Yes. How about you, Toph? What would you say your recommendations for us are this week?
In things that aren't horrifying, I'm going to recommend Off Camera with Sam Jones. This is a magazine, a website, and a YouTube channel that's basically just profiles of interesting people. For instance, you got Olivia Wilde, Rashida Jones, Matt Berenger of The National, John Krasinski of The Office, Dave Grohl, Tim Robbins. Like, he's got a lot of interviews with a lot of people that I'm very much into, and they seem very much interested in talking about things that I'm not going to say are like, oh, he exposes deep dark secrets, but in the Dave Grohl episode, he talks about the songwriting process with Nirvana, where Dave Grohl offers the most perfect quote ever. What was the last thing the drummer ever said in a band? Hey guys, I just wrote a song.
Yeah.
And they're very candid interviews. They're awesome. I haven't gotten a physical copy of the magazine only because it hasn't been shipped to my house yet. But I've ordered a couple of these. But the YouTube channel, Off Camera with Sam Jones, is fantastic. And it's something that I definitely recommend. It's a slice of all of kind of the pop culture life. And he's a very qualified interviewer who gets really good stuff out of his folks.
Very nice.
That is awesome. I have watched a bunch of those and really enjoyed them as well.
They're so good.
His stuff with Will Ferrell is some of my favorite that I've seen. So great recommendation, buddy.
Well, and some of the things are like I just specifically love the YouTube episodes. So it's like Aubrey Plaza. So I'm just gonna masturbate? ?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like how do you like
the titles of the videos are very catching for good reasons. Yeah.
Dave Grohl. That's not a Foo Fighters song, or is it? Come on,
right.
Fucking perfect. Like So and he has a wide selection of people. So. Even the folks I just mentioned didn't turn your crank, and they should have. Come on. Trust, at some point, someone will come along, and you'll be very excited about it. So
yes,
very
definitely.
Nice.
How about you, Davey?
I have two quick ones. The first one is a documentary that's on Netflix right now. It is called Back in Time. It is 90 minutes of history and, I guess, recent history. Surrounding Back to the Future, which is everyone's favorite time travel movie.
I was more interested in it was just Huey Lewis.
Don't worry, there's a sizable Huey Lewis section in this 90-minute documentary. It ggets into not only everybody's reaction to the movie, which is hyperbolic and effusive, full of praise, which is well deserving of the movie, but also it gets into the fan culture that surrounds it a little bit, and it's a perfect documentary for this audience. And
awesome.
So relatedly, I'm going to talk about another time travel thing because I can't get away from this podcast without recommending another graphic novel. Image Comics this year put out a Mark Millar written and Sean G. Murphy drawn book called Chrononauts. It's like astronauts, but with chrono at the beginning.
But with time instead of space.
Chrononauts.
I see what you did there.
Exactly.
Yay, etymology.
It's if you haven't seen Sean G. Murphy's art, do yourself a favor and go find it because he is insanely good. He is so good, and it's not realist in the way that I would typically consider comic book art good, but he has a style and he sticks to it and it looks fantastic. And also, I've really found myself digging into Mark Millar lately. But Chrononauts, and honestly, I say that in a way that's he's Kick-Ass and he's Kingsman and he's mainstream, I guess is what I would say now. But there's no shame in that because he's just damn good. He's just damn good. So go read Chrononauts. The first volume is out in trade paperback right now. And as I discovered last week, and I don't know why it took me this long, Image Comics puts all their trade paperbacks out for $9.99.
What?
Yeah, and they're oftentimes cheaper than that on Amazon. So if you can get a fully fleshed out real story for less than $10 and the art is fantastic, go. I don't have to convince you. Just go do that.
Why are we even talking about this anymore?
Yeah, go do it. And it's a fantastic looking thing to put on your bookshelf.
Bookshelves.
Or my bookshelf if you want to give me a gift.
Yeah, absolutely.
Listeners. With that, I think that will kind of wrap things up for us here in episode 11. Thanks for joining us as always. Dave, where can our listeners find your thoughts and
yeah,
jokes?
I tweet for the show at PopNerdery.
And Toph, where can I find you yelling about my local sports teams?
I got your local sports teams, other local sports teams at the hospital ball. Come back in July. Reasonable things will happen then.
And listeners, you can find me on the Twitters at shouldn'tbragbutt. Thank you so much for joining us. Kisses, love, hugs, kisses.
And always,
if you're into it. And as always,
thank you guys.